y'all feel about being this close and personal. I feel like I've never gotten this close to the camera, but I feel like today is a more intimate conversation. I watched up into the most recent episodes of the newest season of Love is Blind. After watching the latest episodes that dropped this past Wednesday, the keyword I would use is triggered. I was severely triggered by a lot of the topics or scenarios that occurred between these couples. There were certain really triggering things that happened that I could see myself and other people from upsetting relational situations I've been in. I did want to talk about these things because I feel like there's two things I want to talk about. One, mostly the men doing these kind of like, I can't just say the men, but mostly the men doing these kind of like passive aggressive ways of interacting that are diametrically opposed to how they normally act in the day-to-day. And then I want to talk about some of the ways these women react to being targeted in emotionally abusive ways. Let's just call it emotionally abusive because that's what it is. When you're not doing something out of love, what's it coming from a place of? Disdain, disregard. Like you're not really revering the person you're with when you act a certain way that a lot of these people were acting in these conversations. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, and so that's why I thought the camera closer would kind of pull you in to like my deep feelings about all of these things. I want to have a conversation about Kenneth and what's her name? Yeah, I want to have a conversation about Kenneth and Brittany. So I'm not gonna give the whole bio rundown, but here they are, so you know who I'm talking about if you only know them by face. When they got to like their home, when they moved in together after the trip to, where'd they go? Dominican Republic. I know on social media, before I had seen the episodes, I saw everyone talking about like, oh, like he's dating his phone. Now, I was I'm gonna use his term here, I was willing to extend him grace as a viewer, because obviously, one, you have producers kind of manufacturing conflict, and in my brain, I'm like, you could have made it seem like any of these people were like only on their phone if you just filmed them for 2 minutes like they filmed him. Like, he's a principal, he got home, like he has to check on his school that he runs with probably hundreds of people. I don't know if he was on his phone all day. He could have been, but like also that can be manufactured. So I gave him grace there, like he asked Brittany to do. And I say that in that annoying way because after I saw how he ended up splitting up with her, that showed me more of what I think his character is. At this point, she's already confronted him once about not being quite as affectionate or just kind of being more shut down or having his mood change, which I don't know about you all, but you can, it's like tangible. So when they're at the kitchen island and she kind of brings it up again about this whole, like, I don't feel what did she say? The craving from, I don't feel the craving in our relationship, okay? Now, the way she said it very much was implying she wasn't feeling it between the two of them. I didn't take what she said initially as her saying she didn't feel like she craved him, but the way he received it and took it in, because y'all know she was talking about him because she was wanting it to happen. You don't express that you want something to happen, just like you want it to happen, okay? I'm going somewhere with this. Kenneth replies to her after she shares this about like they haven't like really kissed that much when they got home, etc. And he was like, well, that's how you feel, which I have no problem with asserting yourself when someone else is bringing up a topic and you're like, well, that's not how I feel. But what he did, I think, was slightly diabolical, and maybe other people won't agree with me, but he took what she said and said, well, I get what you're saying and I hear that, but if you're saying that and I don't feel that way, that just means that you're not feeling the craving. Y'all, the more he started speaking in that conversation, the level of condescension, because I'm going to talk about how he tries to shield his condescension and his kind of like pushing down of her emotions and everything. Oh my God, it's so aggravating. It's hard for me this is like the most annoying part of the whole thing to me. He projects it back onto her. Well, that's how you're feeling. So, and I understand that if that's how you're feeling, already condescending. But it's like, I don't think that's the way she was expressing it. And you can just say, well, that's how you're feeling. That's not how I'm feeling, to kind of shield yourself. But at the end of the day, she was expressing that you weren't expressing that to her, and that she was wanting that from you, which she reiterated in her response. So the way their conversation kind of devolved into, he put it back onto her, which I didn't think was fair, because she was definitely, from what I saw, making the effort, especially with him, being on his phone and everything. And I don't want to say the honeymoon, but, and on the honeymoon kind of thing. I'll preface this by saying that I'm a spiritual person. I believe in Christ. So this isn't coming from a place of judging his religious affiliation at all. But I don't say that I'm religious, say that I'm spiritual and I believe in Christ the Lord, Jesus of the Holy Bible, because people can say that they're a Christian and that can mean a million different things. So I don't really associate with those titles. But anyway, besides the point, but kind of with the point. There is a way that people like to communicate who are of that realm of religiosity, not spirituality, but religiosity, where they know they can interject God into the conversation and use it as a tool. It's, to me, the way he brought up God when he said, God is going to do what he needs to do to prepare me for what I need. And he'll do that for you for what you need. And if this isn't what God has for us, whatever. All could be well and true, of course. But what bothered me is that kind of thing, to me, is akin to someone coming up to you and, well, you're coming up to your spouse and they won't get a job or something like that. And your spouse is like, well, God told me he has me waiting for the perfect job. What happens there is you've shut down any more conversation from happening, especially for someone like Brittany, who's also religious, because now if she posits something back to you, that is inherently adding to the situation as, oh, so Brittany, you're questioning God now, because I've already said that God has his hand in this part of it. I believe that God has his hand in everything. But also, when we have, this is my belief, when we have our identity in Christ and we're already having a spirit-led and a spirit-filled conversation with someone that we also feel is spirit-led, not to say you should not say the name of God, but you should be very cognizant of the reason why you are using it in the context you're using it in, because they could have had that exact same conversation without him interjecting that. I think it was strategic on his point. And I say that as someone who grew up going to church and grew up around people who express strong sentiments of religiosity. And that tool I have seen be often implemented so that people can control a situation to suppress the feelings of others. So that's what I felt about her. And I also felt sad for her because she didn't seem strong enough or equipped enough to stand up for how she felt in her heart in that moment. She felt shut down, essentially. And it could be because the cameras are there. It could be because someone like Kenneth, who is so stoic and so desensitized, that it just makes you shut down. I've been in scenarios like that where people talk to me in a certain way, and it's it makes you want to cry because it's just the pain is there. You feel confused. And I mean, I know this is a very commonplace term people use now, but gaslighting the situation, it really did feel that way. So watching that was upsetting as someone that I personally could relate to. I don't think me and Kenneth are similar in virtually any way, but I'm a person of nuance, and in observing how he was acting in that particular scenario, you can tell he's good with his words. You can tell he's super smart. There's a reason why he was 25 and a principal of a school. You don't just fall into that typically. I think that he is very intelligent and able to approach things hyper rationally to the point of you're losing your humanity. It's almost like when people, I saw this part of an interview on a In Hindsight video the other day, and it was how can people get an edge up over AI if AI can do this, and that? And the person they were interviewing was like, it's here, it's your brain. The humanity part of you, the brain of you. Kenneth seems to be that kind of person who shut that part off, and he's on AI, let me use my smarts mode. Let me use my book smarts to outsmart Brittany in this conversation, because I'm going to end it here with this. I don't care what anybody says. If you claim to love this woman, which that was something I noticed a lot on this season too, is everybody's saying I love you, and I have a lot of feelings about love. I have a whole video on it. But I'm y'all don't love these people. Because even if they determined at the end of that conversation that they were not right for each other, which Kenneth determined, because unless they cut it, she never implied from that conversation that she was ready to split it off. Maybe I'm tripping. But if you have said to somebody, I love you, and again, you can love people non-romantically too. So let's say he decided at this point in time he is no longer romantically interested. that shouldn't put dictates on your love for the person. As he even said at that table, I have love for you, which that sentence always makes me roll my eyes. People love to use that the moment they decide they're done with you. I have love for you. But she's sitting there crying in what I believe to be a really raw moment for her, where she was being very transparent and putting herself out vulnerable. Putting herself out vulnerably. Oh my goodness, why is that a word? But anyway, this man was right there. He couldn't even get up to hug her. He couldn't even touch her hand. He couldn't say, is there anything I can do to make you feel more comfortable? Literally nothing. I'm sorry. Like, your physical touch doesn't even have to be one of your love languages. If you love this woman and you got engaged to her a week ago, why wouldn't you even feel compelled to extend yourself in some physical manner when she's upset and crying? Even, especially when you're splitting off. And then he only gives her the hug as the like sealant of, we are splitting up because I decided it, by saying, no hard feelings. What do you mean? What hard feelings would you have for Brittany? She didn't do anything to you. I think I got off track, but the reason I say that I could feel myself relating to Kenneth in a way is because taking it to spirituality aspect. I'm sure Kenneth would love that. But I do believe that there's these dark elements to us, and there's the elements of light to us. And when I look at somebody like Kenneth, I feel like he was choosing in that moment to operate in a darker realm of who he is as a person. I don't know him, but I'm just saying from observing a TV show with little clips. I would akin this to, like, my dad always says, like, I feel like I'm the Hulk. Like, I'm calm and I'm good until that trigger hits me, and then I become the Hulk, you know, ravaging and whatever. Like, the elements of rage and upsetness and, like, wanting to go after things, not being able to bring yourself back down to reality sort of thing. And I feel like we all have that in us. And I could relate to Kenneth because in my Hulk version of myself, if I feel like I'm being targeted, like he probably felt like he was being, like, told something about himself by Brittany, which he was, and it was true from what I could tell. He went into that defense mode, and for him that was his darker element of, I'm gonna be cold, I'm gonna act like I can't empathize with what she is saying, I'm gonna flip the script and make it seem as if, well, I don't know where that's coming from, that's how you feel. Newsflash, buddy, like, people can feel how they feel in isolation, but if I'm in an interpersonal relationship with you and we're living together, I'm sure those feelings are gonna have some ties to what's happening between the two of you. You can't just put that all back on the other person. So this is probably gonna be the bulk of the video, because Kenneth really bothered me when he acted like that, and I feel like that's a tactic that a lot of people use, men and women, and I think it's something we can take and assess in ourselves and be like, what is that really nasty, conniving element of myself that comes out when I feel personally targeted? The only other thing I want to talk about is this interaction or the conflict between, I'm gonna like read who they are. The conflict between Jeramy, who spells his name so strangely, I've never seen a Jeramy spell his name like that, and Laura. So I guess here they are if you only know them by their faces. If you saw what happened, then you know. But if you don't, I'll share that. Jeramy had a love triangle, like in the Love is Blind fashion, where he was deciding between two women, which I stand by my statement in this show I don't believe there's ever been a couple where if the man has a love triangle with two women, that the woman he chooses, like the two of them stay together. I don't think that has ever happened. Don't ever say yes to an engagement with a man who was trying to choose between two women. You did not win because he picked you. You are not special because he picked you. He was torn. He was double-minded. He didn't know what he wanted. If he didn't want you and just you, then he didn't really want either of you. He wants both of you in some capacity to some degree, and he wants to feel like he's that guy because he has a couple women essentially fighting over him, which is what we're going to talk about with Jeramy. This is annoying to talk about because, not to crap on his looks at all, like I don't think he's a bad looking guy, but it's like, girls, Jeramy looks like, I live near the Charlotte area. Jeramy looks like every other guy in Charlotte. You don't have to, I can't. Jeramy looks like every other guy in Charlotte. So if it's a looks thing, okay, you already got that covered. Now you just have to find someone who you're actually compatible with, who has a better personality than Jeramy, which I can say is probably a lot of people based on what we're going to talk about. So he has his love triangle. He picks the girl he picks, which is Laura. Then he doesn't pick this girl named Sarah Ann. I knew what type of energy Sarah Ann had when he dumped her in the pods and she goes, well, can you tell me did I do something wrong? Can you tell me what would have been different, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. So she has a fighting spirit in the sense of, instead of her being like, oh, I know my worth enough to know that I don't need to get this man to tell me why he didn't choose me. Like, girl, like, you shouldn't want to be with a man who didn't choose you. You don't even need to know the reason why. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like, if you have something wrong with your personality that's making men not like you, like, there's ways to assess that. I would also just encourage you to, like, go to therapy or something. But don't sit there and grovel at his feet and ask him the reason why. Like, don't do that. Especially Jeramy. Oh my gosh, sorry, Jeramy. But anyway, she even, I believe, came back to the living quarters and gave Laura a hug. Like, it's you, like, you got, like, it's cool, like, I'm happy for you, whatever. So, very conniving when you see that Jeramy chooses Laura. They come back from their trip to the Dominican Republic. And then Sarah Ann, y'all, this is, like, triggering. Sarah Ann DM'd him saying, like, glad I got to meet you, whatever. If you're ever having second thoughts about your choice, let me know and we should talk. Y'all, I literally, like, threw up in my mouth when they read that on the show. I'm like, how low do you have to be? And you know what the funny part is, too? Not that these women should be pitted against each other at all, but I remember watching the first episode and seeing Sarah Ann, and I was like, oh, she's really pretty. And I'm like, ugh, I said you were so pretty, and you just have this nasty, ugly personality. And what's really annoying is you are so pretty. And if you just had a better personality, you would probably set yourself up to be in a better relationship with a better guy. Because as you're going to come to find, Jeramy and Sarah Ann seem to be a match made in heaven because they're both conniving and shady people. People always say, like, you attract what you are or whatever, and then some people, like, don't agree with that, but I think it comes down to, like, remember I said, like, your darker side and your lighter side? Like, you could be presenting, just follow me here, you could be presenting as your lighter side, as Jeramy was doing before when he was on his little trip and everything, but you're, at the core, you're still really feeling fundamentally that darker side. Like, you're still resonating with that side more in the quiet times. And I think that Sarah Ann and Jeramy were on that level together, and their darkness ignited into a fiery pit from hell. Okay, let me stop. I don't like when people are shady like this. It's so upsetting. So turns out what he did was, now think about this. If you haven't seen the show, if you're engaged to a woman and you're a dude, and you get this DM from this girl who you essentially talk to, and your fiance also knows you talked to her during the pods and stuff, what would you do in response to that DM? Okay. I'm hoping that everybody said not respond or block the person or send a message, which would be the last option, and saying, like, please don't reach out to me in this way, it's inappropriate. But I wouldn't even suggest that because it still shows that you engaged with it. There's no reason to engage with it because Sarah Ann knew that she was wrong when she sent it. Like, duh, we're all adults. We know that it was wrong. She knows it's wrong. She knows it's shady. So, he did not take any of those options. Jeramy decided, I'm going to like the message. We're all adults. We know how Instagram works. We know how all messaging apps work. If you double tap a message, it's going to heart it. If you want to look at a different option, you have to hold the message and click thumbs up, click angry, click the cry one. Like, we know this. Like, these people are all in their 20s. So he hearted the message. And then he tried to, like, get annoyed earlier when Laura's sister was like, you could have just thumbs up it. He rolled his eyes. And he was like, oh, well, I just double tapped it. It's like, bro, even if that was the case, and this is the kind of stuff, it's like, this is why it's hard sometimes for me as a woman to deal with low vibrational type men, is because you're going to say something dumb to me and then I'm going to have to call it out. And I resonate with Laura and feel bad for her in this scenario because of something her mom said about her and her affect. And I'll come back to that, hopefully, if I remember to. But she called him out on his stuff because it's like, she's like, don't try to treat me like I'm stupid. So My rebuttal to him saying, well, I just double clicked it, is if you didn't know it was gonna leave a heart, but then saw that it left a heart, you could have removed the heart or changed it into a thumbs up. And I know it sounds like it's talking about semantics at this point, like Ariel, it's like a heart or a thumbs up, but it's like everything means something, and social media drives a lot of people's social interactions. We all know that hearting a message means something totally different than thumbsing it up, especially in the context of what was happening here. So to speed past everything, I didn't know I was going to talk this long about this. He essentially said like, oh, I can't wait to show Laura this. It's going to get me points of trust. Red flag. Flag on the play. If you have someone trying to earn trust points with you, that's like essentially like, it makes me think of Chelsea, how she said she's trying to prove basically her worth to Jimmy. If someone's trying to prove something to you in that way, that means they don't believe it about themselves. If Jeramy was trying to prove that he's trustworthy, that means that he doesn't believe that he's trustworthy, because he's not. If Chelsea's trying to prove that she was worthy to Jimmy, oh, my phone's about to die, then that means that she doesn't believe that she's worthy, which if you don't believe that you're worthy, you're inherently not, because you're always going to put yourself in situations to be targeted and abused. So anyway, he goes off on this whole thing. He hangs out with Sarah until 5 o'clock in the morning, kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger, but the assumption here is that he actually went and hung out with her at her place. Who knows what occurred, but he tried to like bounce around and jump around that when he was talking to Laura about it, which was just so disgusting. But the thing that I noticed here, along with someone like Kenneth, when they had these conflicts with these women, and something I'll give Jimmy for, because Jimmy, like, I just feel so bad for Jimmy. We're not even gonna talk about that scenario. Y'all seen it play out. I feel bad for Jimmy. At this point, I see he's gonna have an interesting conversation with Jessica, so I don't know if I like him at this point. But anyway, both Jeramy and Kenneth did this thing where they act super jovial and chill and goofy and funny, which, remember when Laura said about the Hawaiian t-shirt thing, which was stupid? She was like, I don't think he actually likes the Hawaiian shirts. I think he just does it to be silly. I rolled my eyes when she said that, but then seeing how he acted when he got found out about hanging out with Sarah Ann, like real cold and distant and showing like his darker self, I'm like, maybe Laura's more perceptive than we're giving her credit for. Maybe he just does it to be silly and show this caricature of this lighter, cooler side of him. Because this is the second time we've seen Jeramy shut down. One, when she called him out for reciting that really inappropriate joke to AD about slapping her on the titty. And the second time he shut down there, he gave her the silent treatment that we didn't see on camera. And then he shut down here when she was asking him very valid questions about why he was out till 5 o'clock in the morning. And then he tried to make her feel dumb by saying, well, I shared my location with you. Can you tell that I'm triggered? I'm so triggered. But I'm going to bring it back to Laura, and that's the close of this video. And I remember it, thank God. Her mom even talked about how she can be hard to deal with, and, oh, she's headstrong, and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know Laura personally, but I do know that, unfortunately, I would say for a lot of women who get the naming of being headstrong or tough to deal with, sometimes it's true. But I would just implore everyone to consider, and I hate to be this person, but this is reality. Put Laura as the same personality in a man's body, and far less people would be calling her headstrong and kind of like harder to deal with, and she has her moments, because nobody has said that about Jeramy so far, and he's been exhibiting that behavior. Laura's just standing up for herself. Am I tripping? Like, she speaks her mind. I don't agree with cursing at people, even when you're upset. Like, I don't think that's not an appropriate way to handle a conflict. That's just an issue of people needing to learn how to manage their emotions better and communicate effectively without trying to be harsh and hurt people with words. But I understand that's a defense tactic as well that people use. But I did leave that situation with Laura feeling sad for her, because one, I can see that she's been placed in this bubble of being a hard woman to deal with, but she's just a woman who stands up for herself when she sees bull crap, unlike someone like Brittany, who kind of cowers and is like seen as a softer individual. Probably Sarah Ann appears as a softer individual to Jeramy because she seems like she could more easily be walked over without standing up for herself. So I think Laura needs like an older guy who doesn't come with the Hawaiian shirt bullshit. Like, I think that would be great for her. The last thing I'll say for this video is I'll end with Laura, but this is a message to like pretty much all the women on the Love is Blind cast this season. Oh my God. This whole need to have a man explain to you why he's treating you badly. These are all intelligent, smart women, okay? In most capacities from what I can tell. You know why they're not treating you well. If anyone's not treating you well, if your boss isn't treating you well, if your parents aren't treating you well, your siblings, your best friends, you don't go to them and say, why aren't you treating me well? Why were you mean to me? Why are you being aloof with me? Why are you being quiet towards me? It's because they have a disdain towards you. It's because they have an issue with you. It's because they don't like you. It's because they don't love you. You don't need, I feel like women have a bigger issue with this. Like, men just kind of accept when they see that a woman doesn't care for them in that way anymore or at all to begin with. But women have this need to have like this explanation come, which I've been guilty of in the past. I'm not like above any of these people. But it just, seeing how Laura like sat down and confronted him about where he was, already knowing what the situation was based on her intuition, I wish that she would have like just walked away and just been like, you're not worthy of me spending my words talking to you about this. You know what you did. Because whether she had the details or not, whether she knows exactly what their conversation was that night, she knows what the deal is. That's all you need to know. So, thanks for watching this video. This was like a difficult one for me to talk about because, like I said, it is triggering topics, but it's good for me to get it out because I feel like someone could hear this video and be like, oh yeah, I resonate with what you're saying. Or maybe you can pick up on something new based on what I'm saying. Or maybe y'all are gonna think I'm reading too deep into everything, which is okay too, that's fine. So maybe I'll make another video if things get really crazy, or maybe it'll be too emotionally straining for me and I won't. So I hope you all have a great week and I'll see you in whatever video I post next. Bye.